Hello friends and welcome back to the Unity Diaries. Let's start. Kody Brown has publicly expressed deep unhappiness over what he perceives as Janelle Brown's growing alignment with his estranged wife Kody Brown in the wake of their separation. During a conversation captured for the November 20th episode of the long-running reality series, Kody reflected on a long-held desire for the women in his plural family to maintain close bonds with one another. He described himself as someone who had always hoped his wives would develop meaningful relationships independent of him. Yet after Kody's departure, he felt that hope shifting in an unexpected direction. He spoke of pleading with Janelle for a closer connection of his own, only to sense that she was instead choosing to deepen her friendship with Kody. In Kody's view, that choice left him feeling rejected at a moment when his own emotional foundation felt especially fragile. The history of the Brown family provides essential context for the tension. Kody legally married Mary Brown in 1990. 3 years later, he entered a spiritual union with Janelle, followed the next year by a spiritual marriage to Kody. In 2010, he brought Robyn into the family as his fourth wife. For years after that, he divorced Mary in a civil sense so that he could legally marry Robyn and formally adopt her children from a previous relationship. For more than 2 decades, the four women shared a complex web of daily life, child-rearing, financial interdependence, and the unique pressures of plural marriage under public scrutiny. Kody's announcement in November 2021 that she and Kody had separated after more than 25 years together marked a profound rupture. Although Kody remained spiritually linked to Mary and Janelle and legally married to Robyn, the departure of one wife forced every remaining relationship to be renegotiated. On the same episode, Janelle and Kody spoke candidly about the evolution of their own bond. Janelle noted that their connection had moved beyond the formal role of sister wives. The relationship, she said, now centered on shared history and the children they had raised together. Kody agreed, describing the change as complete. She told Janelle she considered her one of her closest friends. Later, speaking directly to the cameras, Kody admitted she struggled to find the right label for the friendship. It was, she said, a complicated relationship to navigate once the plural structure that had defined it no longer existed in the same way. Janelle, for her part, described feeling caught squarely in the middle. She explained the difficulty of separating her genuine affection for Kody from the ongoing conflict between Kody and Kody. Damned if I do and damned if I don't, she summarized. She also emphasized that Kody and their 6 children remained very close to Kody despite the formal end of the plural marriage. The children, she observed, remembered the full history of the family and were struggling to move between 2 worlds, one that still included Kody as a maternal figure and another that reflected the new realities of separation. Kody responded that no one should be forced to pick sides. The children's emotional needs, she insisted, should take precedence over adult grievances. Kody, however, viewed Kody's physical proximity to Janelle as an additional source of strain. Kody had moved near where Janelle was living in an RV at the time, and Kody interpreted that closeness as further pressure on an already delicate situation. He described himself as standing in a highly vulnerable place. Any misstep on his part, he feared, might prompt Janelle to cross a corresponding line. That cynicism, he suggested, grew directly out of the long process of unwinding more than 20 years of plural marriage and the specific pain of Kody's exit. In his assessment, neither he nor Janelle was being fully honest or realistic with each other about the state of their relationship or the emotional fallout surrounding Kody. The broader emotional landscape of the family after Kody's departure reveals layers of unresolved grief, loyalty conflicts, and shifting identities. For years, the women had functioned as co-parents, co-homemakers, and, to varying degrees, confidants. When one left, the remaining structure had to absorb the shock. Janelle's decision to maintain and even strengthen her friendship with Kody represented, for Kody, a tangible reminder that the old hierarchy of loyalties no longer held. For Janelle, the same decision represented continuity for the children and an authentic adult relationship that had outgrown its original context. Christine, newly independent, appeared to value the friendship as a source of mutual support rather than as a strategic alliance against Kody. Viewers of the series have long followed the intricate interpersonal dynamics among the Browns. The November 20th episode simply made visible a particular fracture line that had been forming since the separation. Kody's sense of rejection, Janelle's sense of being trapped between competing claims, and Christine's insistence on not forcing sides together illustrate how the end of a plural marriage does not automatically dissolve the web of relationships it created. Instead, those relationships must be redefined under conditions of loss, anger, protectiveness toward children, and the lingering practical realities of shared history. The children's continued closeness to Christine further complicates the picture. Janelle's observation that the kids remember all the history underscores that the younger generation carries its own emotional investments. They are not simply assets to be divided or loyalties to be claimed. Their struggle to inhabit both worlds reflects a genuine developmental challenge. How to maintain bonds with a maternal figure who is no longer formally part of the household structure, while also navigating the new boundaries their father and remaining mothers are establishing. Christine's stance that no one should pick sides can be read as an attempt to protect that flexibility for the children, even if it leaves Kody feeling further isolated. Kody's admission that he and Janelle are not communicating honestly about these matters points to a deeper relational problem. Vulnerability, once shared across multiple partners, becomes more concentrated and more dangerous when the network shrinks. The fear that one line crossed might trigger another suggests a relationship operating under conditions of mutual suspicion rather than mutual trust. Whether that suspicion is justified or is itself a product of the trauma of Christine's departure remains an open question the episode leaves unresolved. What is clear is that the emotional accounting of more than 2 decades of plural marriage cannot be completed quickly or cleanly. The legal and spiritual distinctions that once structured the family also continue to shape the present. Kody's legal marriage to Robyn and his spiritual ties to Mary and Janelle create overlapping and sometimes contradictory obligations. Christine's exit removed one spiritual partner while leaving the others intact, yet the practical and emotional consequences ripple outward. Janelle's friendship with Christine exists outside those formal categories, which may be precisely why it feels threatening to Kody. It is a relationship that no longer requires his mediation or approval. In the weeks and months following Christine's announcement, the remaining family members have had to confront practical questions of housing, finances, parenting schedules, and public narrative. The November 20th episode captured one particularly raw moment in that ongoing process. Kody's plea for closeness with Janelle, Janelle's sense of being caught in the middle, and Christine's affirmation of friendship form a triangle of competing needs. None of the three appears able, at least in the footage presented, to fully meet the other's expectations. The result is a portrait of people attempting to rewrite the rules of intimacy after the original rulebook has been discarded. The long history of the Brown family also includes earlier periods of tension and realignment. Over the years, the women have negotiated differing levels of emotional and physical intimacy with Kody, shifting household arrangements, and the public pressures that accompany reality television. Christine's departure simply accelerated a process of differentiation that had been underway for some time. What feels new is the open acknowledgement that one of the remaining wives has chosen to prioritize a relationship with the departed wife over a closer emotional bond with the husband. For Kody, that choice registers as rejection. For Janelle, it registers as authenticity and continuity. For Christine, it registers as friendship freely chosen rather than loyalty demanded. The children remain the most consistent point of connection across the fracture. Their ongoing relationship with Christine provides a living reminder that the family's past cannot be erased by legal or spiritual redefinition. Janelle's description of the kids struggling to inhabit both worlds captures the emotional labor required of them. They must learn to move between households, between narratives, and between the residual affections of adults who are themselves still sorting out their own loyalties. Christine's insistence that no one should pick sides can be understood as an effort to shield the children from that adult conflict, even if it leaves Kody feeling that the children's affection for Christine somehow diminishes his own standing. Kody's cynicism about the possibility of honest communication with Janelle further darkens the picture. He frames the problem as a product of unwinding 20 years of plural marriage. The habits of speech, the unspoken rules, the carefully managed balances of attention and affection that once sustained the larger family no longer apply in the same way. In their place is a more binary dynamic, proximity to Christine versus emotional availability to Kody. Janelle's attempt to maintain both appears, from Kody's vantage point, as a refusal to choose him. From Janelle's vantage point, the demand to choose may itself be the problem. The episode leaves viewers with an unfinished emotional ledger. Kody feels rejected and vulnerable. Janelle feels trapped between competing claims on her loyalty. Christine asserts the legitimacy of her friendship with Janelle and the importance of not forcing the children to take sides. Each position carries its own internal logic. None fully accommodates the others. The result is a portrait of a family still in the early stages of learning how to exist after the formal structure that once defined it has collapsed. The public nature of the Browns' lives adds another layer of complexity. Every conversation, every shift in living arrangement, every expression of loyalty or distance becomes potential content for the series. The knowledge that cameras are present can both amplify and distort the emotional stakes. Kody's willingness to articulate his sense of rejection, Janelle's willingness to describe feeling damned either way, and Christine's willingness to name Janelle as a best friend all occur under the conditions of performance that have shaped their family life for more than a decade. Whether those statements would have been made with the same clarity or intensity in private remains unknowable. What is visible is the public record of a family attempting imperfectly to renegotiate intimacy after loss. In the broader arc of the series, the November 20th episode stands as one more chapter in a long story of adaptation. The Browns have moved across states, adjusted household sizes, navigated financial pressures, and managed the developmental needs of a large group of children. Christine's exit forced a more fundamental reckoning with the meaning of plural marriage itself once one of its central relationships ends. Kody's desire for closeness with Janelle's commitment to her friendship with Christine, and the children's continued attachment to their mother outside the formal structure together illustrate that the emotional reality of the family cannot be reduced to its legal or spiritual categories. Those categories once organized daily life. They no longer fully organize feeling. The vulnerability Kody describes is not merely personal. It is structural. A man who once distributed emotional and practical needs across 4 partners now confronts the concentration of those needs in a smaller circle. The loss of Christine removes not only a wife, but also a node in a network of mutual support and mutual obligation. When Janelle chooses to keep that node active through friendship, Kody experiences the choice as a further thinning of his own support. Whether that experience accurately reflects Janelle's intentions is secondary to the intensity with which he feels it. Emotional reality, once named on camera, becomes part of the family's public narrative regardless of private nuance. Janelle's position is equally fraught. To withdraw from Christine would mean abandoning a relationship that has outgrown its original context and that continues to serve the children's need for continuity. To maintain the friendship risks confirming Kody's sense of rejection. The damned if I do, damned if I don't formulation captures the bind with unusual clarity. It also reveals the extent to which Janelle's emotional labor continues to involve managing the feelings of others, Kody's vulnerability, Christine's need for connection, the children's need for stable relationships with both parents. The middle position is rarely comfortable, and the episode makes that discomfort visible. Christine's insistence that no one should pick sides can be read as both principled and strategic. On the one hand, it protects the children from adult conflict. On the other, it asserts her right to maintain relationships that exist independently of Kody's approval. The friendship with Janelle becomes, in this framing, not an act of alignment against Kody, but an adult relationship that no longer requires his mediation. Whether Kody can accept that framing remains an open question. The episode suggests he has not yet found a way to do so without feeling diminished. The cumulative effect of these overlapping perspectives is a family still very much in process. The November 20th episode does not resolve the tensions it reveals. It simply renders them with unusual frankness. Kody's plea for closeness, Janelle's sense of being trapped, Christine's affirmation of friendship, and the children's ongoing navigation of two worlds together form a complex emotional landscape. That landscape cannot be simplified into a single narrative of betrayal or loyalty. It is, instead, the ongoing work of people attempting to redefine intimacy after the structure that once contained it has changed beyond recognition. While the emotional realignments among Kody, Janelle, and Christine occupied significant attention, another storyline from the same period of episodes drew sharp criticism from viewers focused on parenting practices within the household shared by Kody and Robyn. During a sequence in which the family gathered at Christine's house to say goodbye, cameras captured Robyn, Kody, and their youngest daughter Ariella arriving without seat belts fastened. Ariella, 5 years old and already in kindergarten, was also observed with a pacifier in her mouth. The combination of an unrestrained school-age child and continued pacifier use prompted immediate and widespread concern among longtime viewers. The absence of seat belts struck many as particularly indefensible. Commentators noted that the family had spent considerable time in previous seasons emphasizing safety protocols and the importance of protective measures. The fact that the lapse occurred so close to home, where the majority of accidents statistically take place, removed any plausible excuse related to long-distance travel or unusual circumstances. Viewers argued that the parents had no justification for failing to secure a 5-year-old in a moving vehicle. The visual of Ariella, without a restraint, seated among adults who were themselves unrestrained, became a focal point of criticism that extended beyond the specific moment to broader questions about everyday parental vigilance. The continued use of a pacifier at age 5 generated a parallel but distinct set of concerns. Developmental specialists and experienced parents among the audience pointed out that prolonged pacifier use can interfere with speech development, oral motor skills, and the proper formation of the mouth and teeth. Because both parents were described as home full-time, many viewers rejected the idea that external pressures or lack of opportunity explained the delay in weaning. The criticism centered on the perception that the child's developmental needs were being subordinated to convenience or to an overly permissive approach that failed to set age-appropriate boundaries. These observations did not arise in isolation. Earlier in the same stretch of episodes, viewers had already expressed alarm over Ariella's sleep schedule. On the November 13th episode, Kody revealed that the child's first day of kindergarten marked the first time she had been required to get out of bed on a consistent schedule. Previously, Ariella had largely dictated her own bedtime, often remaining awake past midnight and occasionally staying up through the entire night. Robyn acknowledged the difficulty of establishing a routine, but suggested that meaningful change would have to wait until the child was older. The admission that a 5-year-old was effectively setting her own sleep hours with minimal parental intervention intensified existing worries about structure and consistency in the household. Taken together, the seatbelt lapse, the prolonged pacifier use, and the unstructured sleep schedule formed a pattern that many viewers interpreted as evidence of neglectful or overly laissez-faire parenting. Critics argued that safety non-negotiables, such as proper restraints in a moving vehicle, cannot be treated as optional. Developmental milestones, including the transition away from pacifiers and the establishment of age-appropriate sleep routines, were likewise framed as parental responsibilities rather than matters of eventual convenience. The fact that both parents were available full-time removed one of the common explanations offered for delayed boundary setting in other families. Fan discussions across social platforms and commentary sites repeatedly returned to the same themes. One recurring observation was the apparent disconnect between the family's public emphasis on certain protective measures in earlier seasons and the visible lapses in the more recent footage. Another focused on the cumulative developmental impact of late bedtimes, limited structure, and delayed weaning from comfort objects. A third noted that the child's entry into kindergarten created a natural opportunity for establishing routines that the parents appeared to have postponed rather than embraced. The criticism extended beyond the specific incidents to questions about the overall parenting philosophy operating in the household. Some viewers characterized the approach as excessively child-led, to the point that basic safety and developmental needs were being compromised. Others expressed concern that the parents' own emotional and logistical challenges, navigating the aftermath of Christine's departure, managing a blended family under public scrutiny, and balancing the needs of multiple children, were spilling over into diminished attention to the youngest child's daily requirements. Regardless of the underlying causes, the consensus among the most vocal critics was that the observed behaviors fell short of reasonable standards of care. The seatbelt issue carried particular weight because it involved immediate physical safety. Unlike debates over pacifier duration or ideal bedtime, which admit some range of professional opinion, the requirement that a 5-year-old be properly restrained in a moving vehicle is widely regarded as non-negotiable. The visual evidence of the child riding unrestrained, alongside adults who were likewise unrestrained, left little room for charitable interpretation. Viewers who had previously given the family the benefit of the doubt on other matters found the lapse difficult to overlook. The pacifier discussion, while more open to nuance, still generated strong reactions. Developmental research consistently associates prolonged non-nutritive sucking with increased risk of dental malocclusion, altered speech articulation, and delayed oral motor skill development. At age 5, with the child already in a school setting where peer norms and teacher expectations apply, the continued use of a pacifier stood out as anachronistic. Critics argued that full-time parental availability should have facilitated a more timely transition rather than prolonged the habit. The sleep schedule revelations compounded the impression of insufficient structure. A 5-year-old who regularly stays awake past midnight and sometimes through the night is operating far outside typical developmental ranges for that age. The resulting daytime fatigue, potential impacts on learning and emotional regulation, and the absence of consistent parental limit setting all became points of concern. Robyn's comment that meaningful change would have to wait until the child was older struck many as an abdication of present responsibility rather than a realistic assessment of developmental readiness. Collectively, these issues painted a picture of a household in which certain basic parental functions appeared under-prioritized. Whether the cause was exhaustion, distraction by larger family crises, philosophical commitment to extreme child-led parenting, or some combination of factors, the visible outcomes, unrestrained travel, prolonged pacifier use, and highly irregular sleep, prompted sustained criticism. Viewers who had followed the family for years noted that earlier seasons had occasionally raised similar questions about consistency and structure, but the concentration of concerns around Ariella in the November episodes brought the issue into sharper focus. The broader context of the family's recent upheaval cannot be ignored when assessing these parenting critiques. Christine's departure, the subsequent realignment of loyalties, the logistical challenges of multiple households, and the emotional labor of managing children's relationships across the fracture all place significant demands on the remaining adults. It is possible that the cumulative stress of those demands contributed to lapses in daily vigilance. At the same time, critics maintain that the safety and developmental needs of a young child cannot be deferred indefinitely while adults sort out their own relational crises. The two sets of responsibilities, adult emotional recovery and consistent child rearing, must be managed concurrently rather than sequentially. The public nature of the family's life once again amplifies the stakes. Moments that might remain private in ordinary households become permanent visual records subject to collective scrutiny. The seatbelt sequence, the pacifier sighting, and the sleep schedule discussion entered the permanent archive of the series and, from there, the permanent conversation among viewers. That conversation has been largely critical, reflecting a widespread belief that the observed practices fall short of acceptable standards. The end. Thanks for watching. Please like this video and subscribe the channel.